As Chloe made her way to the principal's office to admit the note was hers, she tried to think of why she would be in trouble for her mom leaving her a note. It just didn't make any sense. Was it against the rules for parents to write a note to their kids? Chloe anxiously walked into the principal's office and said the note was hers. Her mom had written it and left it for Chloe somewhere, although Chloe hadn't actually seen it until now. The principal thanked Chloe for coming forward and admitting the truth. Then the principal did something that shocked Chloe. Molly was a horse trainer who lived in upstate New York. She had a daughter named Chloe. Chloe's dad had long ago skipped town, leaving Molly alone to raise her daughter. In the early years, Molly struggled to earn a living, but as time went on, she got steadier work and made a nice home for Chloe. They never could have predicted it, but one day Molly and Chloe would have their lives turned upside down. It all stemmed from an innocent misunderstanding, but the consequences would be dead serious. The whole scandal began when Molly was at work and dealing with an especially dire problem. At the time, Molly was dealing with a sick horse named Charlie. Charlie had dealt with a number of injuries throughout his life, but never one like this. As Molly watched Charlie's health get worse and worse, she feared that he might not survive. But she was determined to do all she could to save Charlie. Perhaps the only person who cared more about Charlie than Molly was Chloe. She spent countless hours petting and feeding Charlie. She loved being with her mom at work. She loved being around horses. But none of them pulled at her heartstrings like Charlie. Chloe believed that it was just a matter of time before Charlie made a full recovery. One day, Chloe wrote a paper about Charlie and read it in front of her class. She talked about Charlie's health issues and how her mom was working hard to bring him back to health. Not only did Chloe get an A on her paper, but the whole class became invested in Charlie's recovery. At Chloe's school, Charlie the horse became a celebrity. While Molly worked hard to heal Charlie, a tragedy befell the small town that Molly and Chloe lived in. A classmate of Chloe's named Chuck had gone missing. The story was the headline of every local newspaper for weeks as the police searched everywhere for Chuck. The tale of Chuck's disappearance was indeed a strange and mysterious one. Chuck was last seen walking home from school one day. It was a short walk from his school to his house, and the neighborhood was considered to be quite safe. Per usual, Chuck was seen by a school crossing guard who waved hello. That crossing guard would be the last person to see Chuck. All anyone knew was that Chuck simply disappeared sometime after seeing the crossing guard and walking to his house. As the police investigated the disappearance, they discovered something odd. Chuck had a secret hideout in the woods where he liked to hang out, usually by himself, but sometimes with his older cousin. But an eyewitness said someone else visited the hideout too. The eyewitness mentioned that they had seen Chuck in the hideout with an older boy. But as police searched the entire town, nobody would admit to being this older boy. And nobody who knew Chuck had ever heard Chuck mention anything about hanging out with an older boy in the secret hideout. Everyone was stumped. Chuck had been gone for a while now, and the police, as well as the townspeople, began to fear the worst. Some theorized that Chuck had been kidnapped. Others thought he must have suffered some sort of accident. Authorities were desperate to find Chuck but struggled to make progress. As the town searched in vain for any sign of Chuck, there was finally some good news. Charlie the horse seemed to be recovering. For the first time in a long time, Charlie was eating normally and far more active than he'd been in months. Molly was delighted that all her hard work and dedication was finally paying off. If she was being honest, Molly thought there was a good chance Charlie might never fully recover. She never said so aloud, but it was a fear deep within her heart. So when Charlie finally showed real signs of improvement, she was genuinely optimistic that he might make a full recovery after all. Just when Charlie seemed to be doing better than ever, he was startled by a wild animal and injured himself again. This time, Molly didn't think Charlie could heal. It was a devastating setback after so much careful recovery. As Charlie's pain increased, he began to eat less and less. As the days went by and Charlie could barely eat, Molly's worst fears became realized Charlie wasn't going to make it. The vet said Charlie was essentially starving to death. It was a crushing blow to both Molly and Chloe, who both loved the horse so much. Realizing his time was nearly at an end, Chloe visited with Charlie one last time. Chloe cried the second she saw Charlie. He looked so weak and thin. She knew this would be the last time she would be able to see him. She pet him and tried to comfort him as best she could. But the next morning, the vet came and Charlie was gone. Chloe and Molly both held each other and cried. Meanwhile, out of the blue, Chuck showed up at the doorstop of the local police station. He was hungry and scared, but otherwise okay. Everyone was overjoyed that he was safe, but also more confused than ever about what happened to him. As much as they tried, the authorities couldn't get answers out of Chuck. The community started coming up with theories as to where Chuck had gone. Some of them seemed plausible, others were conspiratorial. But everyone was obsessed with figuring out the answer. The leading theories all suggested that he was kidnapped by someone and intimidated into keeping silent. but nobody knew for sure. Despite all the drama going on in the community with Chuck, all Chloe could think about was Charlie the horse. She still grieved for his loss. It was the first time she had lost an animal friend, and she was taking it pretty hard. Her mom was also sad, but as a horse trainer had seen some of her clients' horses pass away, so she was able to deal with the situation better. Molly did her best to help Chloe and used this opportunity to teach Chloe about dealing with death. As the days went by, Chloe got a little bit better but couldn't get Charlie entirely off her mind. One thing she was dreading was that she was supposed to write another paper for her class about Charlie. Chloe had a paper due that was supposed to be a follow-up to her previous report about Charlie. She dreaded having to write it. She knew when she wrote the paper, all the negative emotions would come flooding back. She wondered what she should do and talked about it with her mom. Molly had a habit of leaving little notes for Chloe. Chloe would find the notes while she was at school. It was a nice way of giving Chloe a bit of advice or encouragement. Chloe loved receiving the notes, especially because they were a surprise, and she never knew where they would be hidden. As Chloe struggled with her upcoming paper about Charlie, Molly decided to leave her a note. Little did Molly know, this note would cause a major disruption and scandal in both of their lives. Molly wrote a little note to Chloe that said it's probably best not to tell anyone about Charlie. Molly hid the little note inside Chloe's sock, knowing she would find it when she changed for gym class. Chloe didn't know she had her mom's note hidden in her sock as she went to the girls' locker room to get changed for gym class. As she was changing, the note fell out of her sock, but she didn't see it. Instead, it fell onto the floor in front of her locker. Chloe then went into the gym for class, unaware of what was about to happen. A teacher went into the locker room to look for a student's missing cell phone. That's when she saw the note on the floor. She unfolded it and read it. Immediately, her mind associated the note with the case of the missing boy Chuck, since Chuck's actual name was Charles. Disturbed, the teacher brought the note to the school principal. After reading the note, the principal agreed that the note seemed suspicious. It seemed like the note was instructing a student not to reveal any information about Chuck's disappearance. So the teacher called the local police station to report the note. Meanwhile, Chloe was in gym class, totally unaware of what was happening. The police arrived, read the note, and began trying to figure out who the note belonged to. When Chloe's gym class finished, all of the students were surprised to find the principal waiting for them. They were told to change and all meet in the gym to discuss a serious matter. Chloe and her friends wondered what this could all be about. Once the kids were back in the gym to meet with the principal told them that a note had been found and they needed to know who the note belonged to. The principal then showed everyone the note and read it aloud. Chloe immediately realized the note was from her mom. She wasn't sure how the principal got it or why the principal would care about the note. Chloe didn't make the connection between the horse Charlie and the missing student Chuck. They had two different names, so confusing the two didn't even occur to her. The principal said that whoever the note belonged to should stop by her office as soon as possible. Chloe was relieved that she didn't need to admit the note was hers in front of the whole class. It would have been incredibly embarrassing. But she still had no idea why the principal cared about the note. As Chloe made her way to the principal's office to admit the note was hers, she tried to think of why she would be in trouble for her mom leaving her a note. It just didn't make any sense. Was it against the rules for parents to write a note to their kids? Chloe never got in any serious trouble, and this whole situation made her very nervous. Chloe anxiously walked into the principal's office and said the note was hers. Her mom had written it and left it for Chloe somewhere, although Chloe hadn't actually seen it until now. The principal thanked Chloe for coming forward and admitting the truth. Then the principal did something that shocked Chloe. The principal then opened the door and two police officers stepped inside the office. Chloe was flabbergasted. What was going on? Why on earth would the police care about this note? Chloe felt like this must be some kind of misunderstanding, but she was scared beyond belief at how much trouble she might be in. The police explained that they had been called because the note sounded suspicious. They were concerned that the note was related to the disappearance of Chuck. Chloe said the note was about a horse named Charlie that had recently died. She explained that her mom was a horse trainer. The principal was relieved to hear that the note had nothing to do with Chuck. But the police wanted to follow up with Chloe's mom, Molly, to make sure Chloe's story was true. Chloe was sent back to class, still a little bewildered by her whole experience. She had done nothing wrong and hoped everyone would realize that. Molly was at the stables training a horse when the police arrived. She thought it odd and concerning that the police would show up to the stable, but she was completely shocked when she was told they were there to see her. As she went to the office to meet with them, her mind raced. Molly considered all the terrible possibilities of what the police might say. Her first thought was that something happened to Chloe. She couldn't bear it if Chloe was hurt or in trouble. She raced to the office and found the officers waiting there for her. She immediately asked what was wrong. The police didn't explain anything at first. Instead, they asked Molly if she had been training a horse that died recently. She said yes, she'd been Charlie's trainer and tried to nurse him through some terrible injuries. The police seemed relieved at this response. Then they explained the whole situation. The police explained that a note had been found at school that Chloe said belonged to her. The principal had been concerned that the note might have something to do with Chuck, the missing student. Molly immediately said that she had written the note and hidden it inside Chloe's sock. The police seemed relieved again as Molly's story lined up with the facts. Molly was relieved as well to learn that the whole situation was a big misunderstanding. She knew about Chuck's disappearance but had been so consumed with Charlie's death and Chloe's reaction to it that she really wasn't thinking much about Chuck. In the end, despite the panic, everything was neatly resolved. As the police apologized for scaring Molly, they received a call stating that they needed to head somewhere as soon as possible. They thanked Molly for clearing up the note situation and headed on their way. Molly was worried that Chloe had been just as scared as she was. She decided to pick up Chloe early from school that day. Meanwhile, the police were called to go investigate Chuck's cousin. Chuck's cousin had been one of the suspects in the case. Chuck's cousin was an oddball who tended to bully kids younger than him. Police had questioned Chuck's cousin but never considered a kid that young might be the reason for Chuck's disappearance. When the police interrogated him, Chuck's cousin immediately confessed. He said he wanted to hang out with Chuck at the secret hideout in the woods. Chuck was reluctant to do it, but his cousin bullied him. Chuck didn't want to get his cousin in trouble, so he didn't tell anyone what had really happened. Chuck's cousin had forced Chuck to go camping with him in the woods. Although a bully, Chuck's cousin was lonely most of the time and desperately wanted a friend. So he guilt-tripped Chuck into going camping and not telling anyone about it. Chuck knew his parents would be worried sick, but he felt like he had to do what his cousin told him. Once the pieces of the puzzle all fit, the police announced they had solved the mystery of Chuck's disappearance. Although Chuck's cousin was in deep trouble, most people were relieved that the situation had been caused by child shenanigans rather than something more sinister. Perhaps best of all, solving the mystery stopped all the paranoia and theories in the local community. As the mystery of Chuck's disappearance was being solved, Molly went to pick up Chloe from school. As she predicted, Chloe was seriously rattled by the whole situation. Molly assured Chloe that she'd done nothing wrong and the whole thing was a big, unfortunate misunderstanding. Chloe was relieved and happy to be with her mom. After such a stressful day, Molly suggested she and Chloe go to the stables. Chloe loved being there but hadn't been back since Charlie died. Chloe said she was ready to go back. So Molly and Chloe went to the stables, pet and fed the horses, and got their minds off of all the stress and drama of the day. As the weeks went by, everything went back to normal. The mystery of Chuck's disappearance had been solved. Chloe gradually came to terms with Charlie's death. And then one day, something wonderful happened. A horse at Molly's stable gave birth to a boy horse. Chloe was so excited to see the latest addition to the stable. Molly picked up Chloe from school that day and brought her to the stable to meet the new horse. Chloe had never seen a horse this young before and was immediately enchanted. She thought he was adorable and precious. Molly asked Chloe if she had any ideas for a name. Chloe thought about it for a while. Chloe looked up at her mom and said, "We should name him Charlie II." Molly loved the idea. From that day on, the horse was called Charlie II. Molly loved that her daughter wanted to pay tribute to Charlie, a horse they had both cared about deeply. She was moved by her daughter's sweet tribute. As Charlie II grew up, Chloe spent so much time with him that Molly decided to do something special for her daughter. On Christmas Day, she brought Chloe to the stables. Chloe saw that Charlie II had a big red bow on his stall. Molly told her daughter that Charlie II was now officially Chloe's horse. Chloe burst into happy tears and hugged her mom.